Welcome to Nosleep Radio, the channel that brings you chilling tales of horror and the supernatural. We hope our stories give you moments of relaxation and help you stay focused as you work or unwind. Today's episode features a story submitted by one of our listeners. The story is titled Survival Rules at Dixneyland. Chapter 1. I should never have signed that contract. When I received the email confirming that Dixneyland Anaheim had accepted my application for the position of maintenance technician, I couldn't believe my luck. A dream job at the happiest place on earth, with a salary double what I earned at my old university maintenance job. Congratulations, Daniel Reynolds. We are pleased to welcome you to the Disney family. I read that email again and again, unable to believe that my mechanical engineering degree had finally brought me something other than crushing student debt. But now, standing at the employee gate at 4:30 a.m. on a cold December morning, I felt an unshakable unease. "Daniel Reynolds," a voice called behind me. I turned to see a tall man with perfectly groomed salt and pepper hair. He wore khaki slacks and a pale blue button-down shirt embroidered with a small Disney logo on the chest pocket. His smile never touched his eyes. "Yes, that's me. William Hayes, Director of Technical Operations," he said, extending his hand. His grip was disturbingly cold, as if he had been holding a block of ice for several minutes. "Follow me. We have a lot to do before the park opens." Hayes scanned his ID badge at a reader and led me through an unmarked green door, separate from the main employee entrance that the others were using. "Special entrance?" I asked. "For our department," he replied without looking back. "You'll receive your own card today." We walked down a long corridor of bare white walls, utterly unlike Disney's famous colorful style. The hallway looked more like part of a medical facility than an amusement park. "I must admit," Hayes said as we turned a corner, "your file is impressive. High IQ score, valedictorian at MIT, and most notably your thesis on applying artificial intelligence to anomaly detection in complex mechanical systems. Very impressive." "Thank you," I replied, surprised he knew so much detail. My thesis had never been widely published, and I had only mentioned it briefly on my resume. "But we don't often find candidates with your analytical ability. Most applicants just want the chance to take pictures with Mickey Mouse."
We passed through another security door and entered an elevator hidden behind what appeared to be an ordinary wall. Hayes pressed the button for level -3, a floor not listed on the panel. "Disneyland has 3 basements?" I asked. Hayes gave a dry chuckle. "The park has more levels than most guests realize." Walt was a visionary man, and quite paranoid. He had an extensive network of tunnels and chambers built beneath the park, far more than is officially recorded. When the elevator doors opened, we stepped into a vast fluorescent-lit space. Desks with computer monitors, complicated machinery, and what looked like a workshop filled the room. A dozen employees worked in silence, none glancing up as we passed. "This is where we maintain the magic," Hayes said, gesturing at the space. "The special maintenance team." At the far end of the room hung at least 20 complete character suits on racks. Mickey and Minnie Mouse, Donald Duck, Goofy, and others, all perfectly arranged. But something about them unsettled me. Even from a distance, I could tell they weren't ordinary costumes. They looked too real. "Character costumes?" I asked, trying to keep my tone casual. "We prefer to call them vessels or staff. That's where you come in. You'll help maintain them." As we walked closer, I noticed something strange. Each suit had a fine hidden zipper running from the nape of the neck down the back, almost invisible unless you knew to look for it. "These are complicated costumes," I remarked, trying to understand. "Complicated is putting it lightly." A strange gleam shone in Hayes' eyes. "These aren't the regular character costumes used in the park, Daniel. This is advanced technology, a blend of mechanics, electronics, and other elements. He led me to a Mickey Mouse suit being worked on by a female technician. A complex control console sat nearby, connected to the costume with a tangle of cables. "Watch," Hayes said. The technician, a dark-haired woman wearing safety glasses, typed a few commands. Suddenly, the Mickey suit moved. The motion was smooth, fluid, not stiff like a robot. Its oversized head turned toward us. Those big round eyes locked onto mine. Its eternal grin seemed to widen. An inexplicable dread surged through me. Something was deeply wrong with the way it moved. Too natural. Too alive.
Impressive, isn't it? Hayes smiled. All the park characters are animatronics, remotely controlled, of course. But these special suits? They operate differently. How? I asked, unable to look away from Mickey's stare. Hayes didn't answer directly. Instead, he handed me a thick manual. Your operations guide. Study it carefully, especially the section titled Rules and Protocols. Flipping through, I immediately noticed a numbered list. Mandatory rules for special maintenance technicians. Never unzip a character suit except inside the designated safe room with at least 2 senior technicians present. If you hear a voice coming from inside a suit when no one is wearing it, activate Red Alert immediately and evacuate the area. All suits must be securely locked in the storage chamber at the end of each day. Double check every lock. If you see a suit move without being connected to a control console, do not approach. Report to a supervisor immediately. Never allow the special suits to be exposed to direct moonlight. The list continued with stranger, more disturbing rules. I looked up, trying to keep my face neutral. These rules seem unusual for costume maintenance, don't they? Hayes tilted his head, studying me. You're a smart man, Daniel. That's why we hired you. You've already realized these aren't ordinary costumes. Then what are they? I asked, my voice trembling. Think of them as interfaces, he said quietly, between the world guests believe they're experiencing and the world that truly powers Disney's magic. He led me to a goofy suit lying on a maintenance table, unattended. Want to see inside? He asked, reaching for the hidden zipper. Every instinct screamed no, but I also knew I needed to understand what I had signed up for. Yes, I forced out.
Hayes glanced around to ensure no one was watching, then unzipped it about 4 inches. He motioned for me to look. I expected wires, servos, perhaps a sophisticated metal frame. Instead, I saw flesh. Raw, wet, pulsating flesh. Through the small opening, I glimpsed bright red tissue, membranes, and what looked disturbingly like veins throbbing with blood. I stumbled back, unable to hide my reaction. What the hell is that? Hayes calmly zipped it closed again, smiling faintly. Impressive, isn't it? Technology far beyond ordinary robotics. Don't be overly alarmed. That's just one small part of the bigger picture. That's not technology, I whispered, struggling to process what I'd seen. It's what makes Disney's magic possible. And now, it's part of your job to ensure that magic keeps working. He checked his watch. It's 5:15 a.m. The park opens at 8. You have 3 hours to familiarize yourself with the manual. After that, Catherine over there will guide you through your first day. He gestured toward the woman who had been working on Mickey. At the mention of her name, she looked up. her eyes disturbingly blank. "One last thing," Hayes said as he turned to leave. "A rule not written in the manual. If you ever see a suit with a smile wider than normal, walk the other way and report it immediately. Do not interact, do not look into its eyes for too long, and under any circumstance, do not let it touch you." "Why?" I asked, my blood running cold. "Because," Hayes said, pausing to give me one final look, "because it might not be one of ours anymore." When Hayes left, I stood frozen, trying to process what I'd seen and heard. Mickey Mouse's grin seemed to stretch wider, and I could swear it twitched slightly, though no one was controlling it. "Welcome to Disney," I muttered to myself, realizing I had unwittingly signed up for something far beyond a maintenance job. My instincts told me to run, but a part of me, maybe the scientist, maybe the fool, wanted to know more about these things masquerading as children's beloved characters. I opened the manual and began to read, knowing my life would never be the same again.
Chapter 2. I sat alone in the farthest corner of the room, reading the operations manual with growing horror. Every page I turned contained bizarre information about these vessels, how they operated, how to maintain them, and most of all, the warnings. Maintenance Protocol 17. Each vessel must be nourished at least once every 72 hours. Nourishment procedures may only be performed in the Red Room on level -4. See Appendix C for preparation of the nourishment solution. I flipped to Appendix C and froze when I saw the formula for the nourishment solution. Though written in obscure scientific terms, I recognized it for what it was, a mixture of proteins and blood. Interesting, isn't it? I jumped, nearly dropping the manual. Catherine stood before me, tall and thin, with eyes too large for her small face. Behind her glasses, her irises were an unusual violet. Contact lenses, I told myself. "This is not what I expected," I admitted, trying to keep my voice steady. Catherine smiled, a smile that never reached her eyes. "No one quits on their first day, if that's what you worry about. Most people are enchanted by what we do here." "And exactly what do we do?" I asked bluntly, because what I saw inside that goofy suit was not robotics or electronics, it was organs, she finished for me. "Yes, in a way, but not the way you think. Follow me. I'll show you your workspace." Catherine led me to a smaller area at the back of the main room, set up like a compact laboratory, a high-performance computer, precision tools, diagnostic equipment, and a large metal table at the center. "You're our newest anomaly detection tech. Your job is to inspect vessels when they come in after a shift and identify any desynchronization." "Desynchronization?" I repeated. "Between the external systems and the internal systems, sometimes they fall out of sync, and that's when problems occur." I sat at the chair before the computer and stared at monitors showing complex biological readouts I barely understood. I hadn't been trained in biology. I was a mechanical engineer. "That's exactly why we need you," Catherine said, typing a few keys to bring up a series of charts and images. "Look at these. What do you see?" The screen displayed what looked like cross-sectional scans taken inside one of the suits. I blinked. These were images similar to human CT scans, but the internal structures were wrong. The organs had strange shapes, and there were what looked like metallic wires and tubing interwoven with organic tissue. "A hybrid of mechanics and biology," I said, studying the images carefully. "A hybrid organism?" "Exactly," Catherine nodded approvingly. "Biosynthetic bodies integrated with advanced nephalic mechanical systems. Not simply robots or living creatures, both and neither." "Nephalic? I'd never heard that term." "You won't find it in textbooks," she admitted. "It's proprietary tech developed by a special research division at Disney." "But why?" I asked, still puzzled. Why not just use ordinary robots or human performers? Catherine lowered her voice, though no one was near enough to overhear. Ordinary performers can't create the sense of wonder Walt wanted. Robots are too rigid, too artificial. He wanted something truly alive, something that could react, feel, and interact with guests in ways humans in hot suits never could. So this tech dates back to Walt Disney? I asked, skeptical. No, she shook her head. The first prototypes only appeared in 1987, but the idea was Walt's. He believed real magic required something beyond pure engineering, something mainstream science couldn't achieve. I shuddered as I looked back at the images on the screen. Do these creatures have consciousness? I asked. Catherine was silent for a long moment before answering. Not consciousness in the way you and I have. They possess a kind of primitive awareness, enough to interact convincingly, but not enough to suffer properly. I didn't believe a word of it. Someone was lying, either she or whoever fed her this explanation. How many vessels are there? I asked. 42 active. Nearly half of the characters appearing in the park. The rest are still traditional performers. How can you tell them apart? I asked. You can't, she said with a smile. That's the whole point. Vessels move more naturally, respond better, and never need long breaks for heat exhaustion. They're the perfected versions of Disney characters. A bell chimed overhead. Catherine glanced at her watch. 7:30. 30 minutes until the park opens. Today, you will watch me perform basic checks. Tomorrow, you will do them yourself. We returned to the main room. The technicians were busy prepping vessels for the day. I watched, equal parts horrified and fascinated, as they hooked syringes and feeds into hidden ports and tested eye and mouth responses. Mickey was fully activated, standing upright and turning his head smoothly from side to side. Donald Duck flapped and made his characteristic squawk. Farther away, Snow White moved her hair in utterly natural motions.
The vessels were monitored from the central console, Catherine explained, pointing toward a glassed observation room above the main floor. Supervisors watch everything through hidden cameras and can issue override commands if anything goes awry. How bad can things get? I asked. Refusal of commands, unprogrammed movements, inappropriate interactions with guests, she said. She hesitated. Sometimes they deviate on their own. Deviate? I pressed. Is that something to worry about? That's why we have strict rules and continuous monitoring, she hurried to reassure me. Last year, we had only 3 Level 1 incidents and no Level 2s. That's not in the manual, I said. What are Level 1 and Level 2 incidents? Catherine's face grew serious. Level 1 is when a vessel refuses remote commands and must be shut down via emergency protocol. Level 2 is when a vessel removes its outer shell. I felt a cold wash over me. And then what? I asked. They fixed that vulnerability, she said quickly, sidestepping my question. The newest vessels have superior safety systems. I nodded, deciding not to push further for the moment. Instead, I focused on another detail. 3 Level 1 incidents last year. What happened? Did guests notice? Catherine shook her head. It's too early for you to worry about that. Learn the procedures first. By then, the techs were lining up the vessels for deployment. A strict routine. Each vessel was given a final check, then checked out by its ID code. Each technician handled 2 or 3 vessels, guiding them through secret tunnels to appear at various locations in the park. How do they control them remotely? I asked, watching Mickey and Minnie walk with uncanny natural motion. Immersive control tech, Catherine said. Controllers sit in special booths wearing full-body sensor rigs, but vessels also possess a degree of autonomy. They can perform basic functions and react to the environment without direct commands. I watched the room empty slowly until only a few technicians remained and a handful of vessels were still being repaired or serviced. Why don't I see the traditional costume staff prepping in here? I asked. Catherine led me through another door. They have their own dressing rooms, raised 2 floors above. Those people aren't aware of us, and we prefer it that way. We entered a separate room with 5 desks arranged in a semicircle. Each desk had a monitor and keyboard, plus diagnostic devices I didn't recognize. This is where you'll spend most of your time. The anomaly detection team. Usually 5 people, but 2 have recently left.
Left or were fired? I asked, sensing something off in the way she said it. They left, she insisted, though I detected hesitation. This work isn't for everyone. She showed me the main console and explained how biometric and mechanical telemetry from each vessel streamed back in real time. My task, monitor those metrics and alert on any anomaly. She pointed to 3 dials labeled Sync Control, Nepholic Stability, and Disassociation Index. If any of these exceed the red threshold, press that button and the vessel will be recalled immediately. Disassociation? I asked. Disassociation of what? Catherine paused. Between the creature inside and the character shell outside. Sometimes they stop seeing the exterior as part of themselves. I tried not to show the cold shiver that ran down my spine. So there is a creature inside the costumes? A real being? Not in the way you imagine, she said, not exactly denying it. I told you, they are biosynthetics, not human, not animal, not machine, a completely new category. I wasn't convinced, but decided to keep observing and learning. The rest of the morning, I shadowed Catherine at the monitors, learning to read data and spot early signs of trouble. Most vessels operated within normal bounds, with minor fluctuations as they interacted with guests. At noon, Catherine declared a lunch break. You have an hour. The staff cafeteria is upstairs. After lunch, we'll run a performance check on Mickey number 3. It's coming in for scheduled diagnostics. As I left the control room, one of the other technicians, a young man, probably in his 20s, with red hair and freckles, greeted me. New tech, huh? He asked, cheerfully. I'm Trevor. Daniel, I introduced myself. First day? Trevor glanced around to make sure no one was listening and dropped his voice. We eat in the back food court near Frontierland, not the official cafeteria. Meet me there if you want to know what's really going on. Before I could answer, he was gone, his expression returning to normal as he passed Catherine in the doorway. I stood there, weighing my options. Clearly there was more than Catherine was telling me, but did I truly want to know the whole truth? Heading for the elevator, I passed a vessel, Chip from Chip and Dale, sitting on a maintenance bench. It was powered down and unattended, but as I walked past, I could have sworn its small head turned toward me, and those black bead-like eyes looked straight at me with an intelligence I couldn't explain. Worse, when I glanced back, its smile had widened, a little too far for its face, with a dangerous suggestion I couldn't place. Hayes's final warning echoed in my head. If you see a character with a smile wider than normal, walk the other way. I quickened my pace and stepped into the elevator without daring to look back, but I felt the weight of those tiny eyes following me until the door closed.
Chapter 3. I decided to meet Trevor. Instead of heading to the main cafeteria, I made my way toward the Frontierland area, trying to look like just another employee passing through crowds of cheerful guests. The park was already packed, families laughing, children darting excitedly from one ride to another. None of them had the slightest idea about the horrors standing beside them in photos, hugging their children, shaking their hands with arms that contained something not artificial. I found the staff dining area tucked behind Frontierland, hidden behind an unmarked door with a simple "Employees Only" sign. Trevor was at a corner table with 2 others, a young woman with dyed purple hair and a balding middle-aged man. You made it, Trevor waved with a grin. Everyone, this is Daniel, the new guy in anomaly detection. Welcome to the rabbit hole, the purple-haired woman said dryly. I'm Zoe. I work in nepholic control. Roger introduced himself. Level 3 nourishment tech. I sat down, feeling their eyes measure me. So, are you going to tell me what's really going on here? Because what I saw this morning... Freaky, huh? They showed you the inside of a vessel yet? I nodded. Hayes unzipped Doofy. Just a little peek, but enough to know it's not a robot. Zoe finished. Exactly, Trevor said. Listen, everything Catherine or Hayes told you is only part of the truth. Mostly lies, but laced with just enough fact not to be outright false. So what is the truth? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted the answer. The three exchanged glances. Roger spoke first. In 1966, before Walt Disney died, he met with a group of secret researchers, not normal scientists, mystics, practitioners of what they called spiritual science. They claimed they could create real magic, not illusions, but actual magic. Walt didn't believe them until they proved by creating life. They showed him a small creature, looked like a mouse, but not exactly. It was conscious, could understand commands, and most importantly, could connect with the human mind.
A hybrid of mechanics and biology, I said, studying the images carefully. A hybrid organism? Exactly, Catherine nodded approvingly. Biosynthetic bodies integrated with advanced nephalic mechanical systems. Not simply robots or living creatures, both and neither. Nephalic? I'd never heard that term. You won't find it in textbooks, she admitted. It's proprietary tech developed by a special research division at Disney. But why? I asked, still puzzled. Why not just use ordinary robots or human performers? Catherine lowered her voice, though no one was near enough to overhear. Ordinary performers can't create the sense of wonder Walt wanted. Robots are too rigid, too artificial. He wanted something truly alive, something that could react, feel, and interact with guests in ways humans in hot suits never could. So this tech dates back to Walt Disney? I asked, skeptical. No, she shook her head. The first prototypes only appeared in 1987, but the idea was Walt's. He believed real magic required something beyond pure engineering, something mainstream science couldn't achieve. I shuddered as I looked back at the images on the screen. Do these creatures have consciousness? I asked. Catherine was silent for a long moment before answering. Not consciousness in the way you and I have. They possess a kind of primitive awareness, enough to interact convincingly, but not enough to suffer properly. I didn't believe a word of it. Someone was lying, either she or whoever fed her this explanation. How many vessels are there? I asked. 42 active. Nearly half of the characters appearing in the park. The rest are still traditional performers. How can you tell them apart? I asked. You can't, she said with a smile. That's the whole point. Vessels move more naturally, respond better, and never need long breaks for heat exhaustion. They're the perfected versions of Disney characters. A bell chimed overhead. Catherine glanced at her watch. 7:30. 30 minutes until the park opens. Today you will watch me perform basic checks. Tomorrow you will do them yourself. We returned to the main room. The technicians were busy prepping vessels for the day. I watched, equal parts horrified and fascinated, as they hooked syringes and feeds into hidden ports and tested eye and mouth responses. Mickey was fully activated, standing upright and turning his head smoothly from side to side. Donald Duck flapped and made his characteristic squawk. Farther away, Snow White moved her hair in utterly natural motions.
The image almost made me drop the phone. A Winnie the Pooh vessel, its back zipper fully open. Inside was a grotesque mess of glowing organs, metal tubing, and thin tendrils writhing outward. 2 techs were holding it down while a third prepared to inject something. The floor around them was slick with a dark red liquid that I knew wasn't paint. What happened? I asked, hand shaking as I returned the phone. They subdued it, Zoe said, but not before it consumed a trainee. Consumed? I whispered. Entity D doesn't only eat emotions, Trevor explained, gaze lowered. That's its daily diet. But sometimes it craves something more. It can absorb a person's body and mind, fuse them into itself. I searched their faces for some sign of a cruel prank, a hazing ritual for new hires, but they were too serious, too haunted. Why do you still work here? I asked, finally. You think we can just walk away once we know? Roger said bitterly. Once you learn about Entity D, you have 2 choices. Keep working for Disney or disappear. There is no third option. Quitters, Trevor said, making air quotes, are actually people who know too much, or are deemed a security risk. They don't walk away. They get recycled. Recycled into what? I asked, though I already feared the answer. Into new vessels, Zoe whispered. They need human DNA for the biological component. Nausea churned in my stomach. You're saying those creatures are partly made from ex-employees? They all nodded grimly. Then why tell me any of this, if knowing means I might be next? Because we need you, Trevor said. Their formulas aren't working as well anymore. The vessels are resisting control. Level 1 and Level 2 incidents are increasing. Something's happening. We think Entity D is trying to reassemble itself. And if it succeeds? I asked. God help us all, Roger said. The spiritual science Walt touched upon warned that a complete Entity D would have near limitless power here. It could warp reality, bend time, consume consciousness on a massive scale. But what can I do?
Your record, Zoe said. Your thesis on anomaly detection in complex systems. We think you can find a pattern, a way to predict when Entity D is trying to reconnect. If we can predict it, we can stop it. And maybe, Trevor added, find a way to destroy it for good. Why should I trust you? I asked. How do I know this isn't another test? Zoe and Trevor looked to Roger. He rolled up his sleeve. His arm was covered in strange scars, not cuts, but perfect circular marks, as if chunks of flesh had been drilled out. They take samples from me every month, he said quietly, to keep the supply fresh. This isn't a test, Daniel. It's survival, and we're losing. I stared at the scars, then into their eyes, and I knew they were telling the truth. Part of me wanted to run, to toss my badge and never look back, but if what they said was true, there was no escaping this. Not for me. Not for anyone. What's your plan? I asked finally. Trevor smiled faintly, relieved. First, we need access to the central database. It contains the full history of every vessel, every anomaly, every incident. If there's a pattern, it's in there. But the database is heavily restricted, Zoe said. Only senior managers like Hayes have clearance. I can help with that. I know a bit about system security, but I need to understand the vessels better. I need to see one, from the inside. The three exchanged another glance. Roger spoke at last. I can arrange that. Tonight, after the park closes, we'll take you to the Red Room. That's where I perform nourishment. You'll see everything. But be ready, Trevor warned. Once you see what's really inside a vessel, you'll never see the world the same again. We agreed to meet after shift. I returned to anomaly detection with a new sense of purpose. I wasn't just a maintenance tech anymore. I was on the front lines of a hidden war against something that didn't belong in this world. Catherine was waiting, looking displeased. Where were you at lunch? I lied. Got a little lost. She stared at me for a long moment, then nodded. Mickey number 3 has been brought in. This is your chance to watch a full diagnostic. I followed her to the maintenance bay. Mickey Mouse sat on the metal table, but something about its movements was wrong. No longer the cheerful animated gestures I'd seen earlier. These were cautious, almost predatory. As I approached, its head snapped toward me, too fast, too sharp, and for just a moment I saw its eternal smile shift. Wider, stretching almost to those round ears, and it wasn't joy anymore. It was hunger, maleficence. Catherine didn't notice, too busy at the control panel preparing her diagnostic tools. But I had seen it, and I knew Mickey had seen me notice. And in that instant, I no longer doubted anything Trevor, Zoe, and Roger had told me. Because no robotics on Earth could create the pure hunger and malevolence I had just witnessed in Mickey Mouse's eyes. I was facing something not of this world, and I knew, no matter what it took, I had to find a way to stop it.
Chapter 4. The rest of the afternoon passed under suffocating tension.
I watched as Catherine conducted the scheduled diagnostics on Mickey number 3, forcing myself not to reveal that I had glimpsed its real expression. The procedure involved connecting the vessel to a network of sensors, measuring what Catherine called nephalic parameters, pulse, temperature, electrical activity, and something she referred to as synchronization state. She also extracted a sample from a hidden port beneath the fur on Mickey's back, a viscous, faintly glowing blue fluid. Diagnephalic, she explained. It sustains both systems, mechanical and biological. I nodded, feigning note-taking while committing every detail to memory, planning to share it later with Trevor's group. My eyes kept darting at Mickey. It had returned to its normal state, frozen grin, blank round eyes. But I knew something was lurking behind that mask, watching me, waiting. At the end of my shift, Catherine handed me a new employee badge. Access Level 2, she said. This gets you into most of our department's areas, but not all. Be here at 6 a.m. tomorrow. I don't have to stay help close out tonight, I asked, searching for an excuse to linger after hours. Not in your first week, Catherine shook her head. Go home, rest. This job can be exhausting. I left, pretending to head out, but instead found a quiet spot near Tomorrowland and waited. The sun dipped beneath the horizon, and the park transformed into a sea of multicolored lights. Nighttime brought a different kind of magic, enchanting on the surface, but darker too. Shadows stretched long, and corners seemed to hide unseen watchers.
I couldn't stop wondering. How many of the costumed characters laughing with children, hugging guests, posing for photos were vessels? Hybrids of man and something not of this world. And how many of them harbored unprogrammed thoughts, craving freedom from Disney's control? At 10 p.m., as the park neared closing, I received a message from an unknown number. Indiana Jones, back entrance, 10:30 p.m. Bring your card. I deleted it and made my way toward Adventureland, doing my best to look like an employee wrapping up late duties. Passing other Disney characters, I couldn't help but see them differently now, especially Snow White. She stood perfectly still in a dark corner, head tilted at an odd angle, as though listening to something only she could hear. As I walked by, her head snapped toward me in a jerky, unnatural movement. From a distance, I couldn't be certain, but I could swear her smile had grown just a bit wider. I found the Indiana Jones service entrance more easily than expected, a green metal door hidden behind a row of decorative shrubs. Trevor was waiting, glancing around nervously. "Hurry," he whispered, scanning his badge and pulling the door open. "Patrols start in 15 minutes. I slipped inside. Trevor shut the door quickly behind us. We stood in a narrow corridor lit by dim red emergency lamps. "Roger and Zoe are waiting in the Red Room," Trevor explained as we hurried down the passage. "We've got maybe an hour before the official nourishment team arrives." "Nourishment?" I asked as we descended a metal staircase. "You'll see soon enough," Trevor said, his face unreadable. "Just be ready, and remember, everything you see tonight is what we're trying to stop." We navigated a maze of maintenance tunnels, all bathed in the same ominous red light. Finally, we reached a massive steel door marked only with a glowing red biohazard symbol. A biometric scanner blinked beside it. "Roger disabled the cameras for tonight, but I still need to pass the scan." He pressed his palm to the panel. A laser swept across, the light turned green, and the door hissed open. The Red Room earned its name. The space was about the size of a basketball court, tiled from floor to ceiling in glossy blood-red ceramic. In the center stood enormous glass tanks filled with dark crimson fluid, tubes and conduits snaking out into an array of complex machinery along the walls.
But what stole my breath were the figures against the walls. At least a dozen vessels, lined up in dormant rows. Mickey, Minnie, Donald, Goofy, Pluto, and others I didn't recognize. Their eyes were closed, tubes and cables plugged into their spines. Roger and Zoe waited at a control station, both looking tense. "You made it," Roger said without turning. "We don't have much time. The official team arrives at 11:30. "Do you want to see it?" Zoe asked, locking eyes with me. "Last chance to walk away." I swallowed hard, heart pounding, but nodded. "I need to know what we're up against." Roger entered a command. A robotic arm wheeled out Pluto's vessel, placing it on a metal table in the center. Its eyes remained closed. "This one's being phased out," Roger explained. 3 Level 1 incidents this month. They're prepping it for recycling." "Recycling?" I asked. "They extract the nephalic core, destroy the biomass, then rebuild with a new host." Roger donned thick gloves and a protective mask, signaling me to do the same. "Don't let any fluids touch your bare skin," he warned. With a practiced motion, he flipped Pluto face down and pulled the hidden spine zipper. Unlike Hayes's brief reveal, this time the zipper ran its full length. The outer shell peeled open. My jaw dropped. No vague glimpse of organs this time. Instead, a complete biological system sprawled within. Pulsating organs, slick flesh interlaced with metal tubing. Lattices of glowing blue fibers ran like veins, circulating the same luminous fluid Catherine had sampled earlier. At its center pulsed something like a heart, but spherical, divided into chambers that contracted and expanded in disturbing rhythm. Woven through it were strands of metal and glass. As I stared, its beat slowed, almost aware it was being watched. "The nephalic core," Roger said grimly, "where the fragment of Entity D resides. The rest is just support systems." I noticed another structure near the head, brain-like but warped, with strange appendages. "What's that?" I asked. "It's brain," Zoe said softly. "But not just nephalic. Human DNA, too." My stomach lurched. "Meaning?" "Every vessel carries part of a donor," Trevor said quietly, his expression grim. "Usually brain and neural tissue. It helps the entity understand us, think like us." "Donors," I muttered. "You mean ex-employees?" Roger nodded bleakly. "Or vagrants, runaways, people no one will miss. Disney has networks for finding them." The blue fibers pulsed harder, quivering as though reacting to us. Even worse, Pluto's detached face twitched, an eye cracking open to stare at me. "It's still conscious?" I asked, backing away. "Partly," Roger confirmed, quickly zipping it closed. "They're kept in sleep states, but never fully unconscious. That's why nourishment is necessary, not just for fuel, but to pacify them." I glanced toward the tanks. "Nourished with what?" "Come," Zoe said. She led me to one of the massive glass vats. Up close, I realized the thick red fluid wasn't synthetic. "It's blood," I whispered, "mixed with hormones, proteins, and substances even we don't understand. They consume it, blend it with their nephalic fluids, produce what Entity D needs to survive here." "Where do you get all that blood?" I asked coldly. "Blood banks, donations, and from us. Every special maintenance employee gives a liter a month, more if they screw up." He rolled up his sleeve, revealing rows of needle marks far more than ordinary donations would explain. "That's why we all look pale," Zoe said with a bitter smile. "People think it's from working underground. It's anemia." He gestured toward a heavily reinforced glass chamber at the far end. Inside stood a vessel unlike the others. Gaunt face, sinister smile. "What's that one?" I asked. "The problem," Zoe said softly.
The prime vessel, Trevor explained. The first, built in 1987. It holds the largest fragment, the nail keeping the others tethered. It's powerful, dangerous, and becoming unstable. It's calling to the others, Roger added, trying to reassemble. That's why incidents are rising, Zoe said grimly. The vessels are thinking independently, challenging controls, trying to break free. Signs of only one thing. Entity D wants to become whole. And if it does? I asked. Disaster, Roger said. In its full state, Entity D would wield unimaginable power. Mass perception manipulation, reality alteration. Why now? I pressed. Cuts, Trevor spat. Upper management cheapened the formula. Less real blood, more synthetic filler. They're starving it. And a hungry entity is a dangerous entity. So what's the plan? I asked. You said you could access the central database, Roger reminded me. That's step one. We need the anomaly history. Every incident. If there's a pattern, we'll find it there. And maybe, Zoe said grimly, a way to kill it. How? I asked. Theory is, Zoe said, destroy the prime vessel, the nail. Without it, the fragments can't hold form here. They'll unravel. As she spoke, I glanced at the prime vessel in its glass prison. Its eyes were closed, yet I felt its attention press down on my mind. Then, without warning, the room plunged into darkness. What the hell? I whispered. Impossible, Trevor gasped. This line has independent generators. It never goes dark. A moment later, red emergency lights flickered on, bathing the chamber in hellish glow. Shadows stretched like claws across the red-tiled walls. And every vessel along the wall had opened its eyes. Oh shit, Roger whispered. Power interruption protocol. They're waking up. How? I began, but froze. The prime vessel wasn't just awake, it was moving, raising a hand to press against the glass, tilting its head in mock curiosity. It knows, Zoe breathed, terror in her voice. It knows we're plotting against it. As if to confirm, the prime vessel's grin spread, wider and wider, until its mouth spanned nearly its whole face, teeth far too sharp for any cartoon. With a hiss, the tubes connecting the other vessels began detaching themselves, deliberately, as though the creatures were unplugging their own restraints. We have to go, Trevor shouted, yanking me toward the door. But no time, Roger barked. Run. As we sprinted for the exit, I glanced back once last. The vessels were climbing off their platforms, their zippers slowly unsealing, tendrils of glowing flesh probing outward. And in the glass chamber, the prime vessel pressed both hands against the barrier. I swear I heard its faint chuckle as cracks began to spiderweb across the reinforced glass.
Chapter 5. We ran like mad through the crimson-lit corridor, gasping for breath, our footsteps clanging against the cement floor. Behind us, I could hear the sound of metal striking metal and the wet, tearing noises of the vessels freeing themselves. The security door, Roger shouted, sprinting toward a wall-mounted panel. We need to seal it. He placed his hand on the scanner, but nothing happened. No accepting beep, no green light. The system's down, Zoe blurted. The entire automated security grid has been shut off. How could that be? I started, but my words were cut short by a horrific sound behind us. The crash of a heavy steel door being smashed against a wall. Run! Trevor yelled, dragging me toward a metal staircase. Up to the park! We bolted up the stairs, footsteps pounding in the tight space. Behind us came a sound unlike ordinary footsteps, a strange metallic clicking, interlaced with wet, slopping noises. They're following, I gasped. Don't look back, Zoe ordered. Just run. We reached the top of the stairs and burst through another door into a wider service corridor. Emergency lights flickered here too, freezing moments in harsh red before plunging us into blackness again. "Where now?" I asked, fighting to steady my breathing. "The security hub," Roger replied, pointing down a side passage. "We can lock down the whole sector from there." We turned the corner and froze. A security guard lay sprawled on the floor, his head twisted at an impossible angle. Blood pooled beneath him, and his body was covered with wounds unlike any knife or gunshot. Round holes, as if he'd been punctured by enormous feeding tubes. "Oh God," Zoe whispered, hand clamped over her mouth.
Trevor darted forward, rifling through the man's pockets for his security card and sidearm. "Take it," he shouted, tossing the gun to Roger. "Keep moving." We pressed on, but when we reached the security hub, our last hope collapsed. The door had been ripped from its hinges, the inside a bloody ruin. 2 more guards lay broken on the floor, their bodies riddled with the same ghastly wounds. "Something got here before us," Roger muttered, checking the pistol with grim precision. "Or someone." "How could the vessels have gotten ahead of us?" I asked. "Not them," Zoe breathed, eyes wide with dread. "The Prime vessel. It triggered the blackout, then freed itself. It's making sure no one can stop it." "So what now?" I asked, despair cracking my voice. "We have to get out," Trevor decided. "Leave the park, regroup, make a new plan. We can't face them like this." "But if the vessels escape the underground," I pressed, "if they get into the park, or worse, into the city?" "It'll be catastrophic," Roger admitted. "But if we die here, no one will know the truth. We have to survive to fight another day." A heavy crash echoed from the hall behind us, urgency pounding in our veins. This wasn't just metal clashing anymore. This was footsteps, heavy, grinding, inhuman footsteps. "Nearest exit?" I demanded. "Through Fantasyland," Trevor said, pointing away from the noise. "There's a staff exit near It's a Small World. Move!" We sprinted through the shadowed tunnels, emergency lights flashing. Every turn risked collision with one of the freed vessels. My mind reeled with images from the Red Room, the zippers splitting, glowing tendrils writhing outward. After several desperate minutes, we reached a door marked Fantasyland, stage access. Trevor shoved it open, and we found ourselves under the floorboards of one of the show stages. "This is under the main stage. If we can get topside, we'll be in the middle of the park." "Wait, do you hear that?" Zoe suddenly halted, tilting her head. We froze, straining to listen. At first, only our ragged breathing filled the air. But then, I heard it. A faint melody, warped and twisted, drifting from somewhere nearby. "It's a Small World," I whispered. "The ride's theme song." "No way," Trevor shook his head. "The park's closed. All the rides are off." "Then who turned on the music?" I asked, chills crawling over me. The answer came as a voice, a childlike, distorted voice crackling through the overhead speakers. "It's a small world after all. A small world after all."
It didn't sing the whole song, just repeated the line, slower and slower each time, until it no longer sounded like a child at all. It sounded ancient, hungry, mocking us. "They know where we are," Roger muttered, tightening his grip on the gun. "They're toying with us." "Up," Trevor ordered, pointing to a ladder that led to a hatch. "Now!" Roger climbed first, shoving the hatch open. Cold night air rushed in, along with the distant music of the park, still echoing through the loudspeakers. Cheerful, oblivious, so wrong. Zoe followed, then Trevor shoved me upward. I scrambled through the hatch into an open-air stage. Dim security lights cast long shadows across empty Fantasyland. At night, without visitors, it felt like a ghost town. Dark castles looming, silent rides hunched against the sky. "Where's the exit?" I asked, as Trevor emerged behind me. "Across the castle," he answered, nodding toward Sleeping Beauty's tower. "We'll have to cut around—" He never finished. A massive white-gloved hand with only 4 fingers shot from the hatch, seizing his ankle. "Trevor!" Zoe screamed as he was yanked down to the waist before catching the edge of the hatch. Roger lunged, firing 3 shots into the darkness below. A monstrous shriek echoed, and the hand released Trevor. He scrambled up, his ankle bleeding where the glove had torn through his pants. Roger slammed the hatch shut and shoved a stage prop crate over it. "What the hell was that?" I gasped, hauling Trevor upright. "Did you see it?" "Mickey," he stammered, trembling. "But not Mickey anymore. It's changing." "We need to move now," Roger snapped, checking his dwindling rounds. "That won't hold them for long." We bolted across the stage, heading toward the castle. But Fantasyland at night was a nightmare. Every cheerful facade twisted by the knowledge of what hunted us. We reached an open plaza near the teacup ride and froze again. The merry-go-round music of the teacups blared to life. The giant spinning saucers lit up and began to turn, slow at first, then faster and faster. "No one turned that on," Zoe whispered, horror in her eyes. "They're coming," Trevor said, pointing.
5 figures emerged from the shadows beyond the teacups. Mickey, Minnie, Donald, Goofy, and Pluto. But their movements were all wrong. Instead of the bouncy cheerfulness of cartoons, they lurched and staggered, joints bending at impossible angles. As they drew closer, I saw their back zippers split, glowing blue tendrils poking out, swaying like antennae. "Run!" Roger roared, firing 2 shots. 1 bullet struck Goofy, staggering it, but it didn't fall. Instead, bright blue fluid sprayed from the wound, and it kept coming, head cocked at an eerie angle. We sprinted for the castle, but 3 more vessels barred the entrance. Snow White, the Beast, and a towering figure I didn't recognize. "They've boxed us in," Trevor panted, spinning. "Another way?" Zoe shouted, pointing to a narrow alley between buildings. We dashed into the passage, but only a few steps in, Roger stopped dead, throwing out his arm. "Wait," he whispered, eyes wide. At the far end of the alley stood a tall, thin figure silhouetted in the streetlight. As it stepped forward, I recognized it instantly. The Prime Vessel. The villain we'd seen locked in the Red Room's glass chamber, but now, free, it had changed. Its zipper hung fully open, spilling tendrils of glowing blue and veined-like strands that writhed and twisted in the air. Its cartoonish face stretched into a grotesque grin, its mouth opening far wider than human jaws, exposing rows of predatory teeth. "Behind us!" Zoe screamed. I spun. The other vessels had closed in, sealing off our last escape. We were trapped. Roger raised the gun, but the Prime Vessel moved with impossible speed. A tendril lashed out, wrapping his wrist, crushing until he dropped the weapon. It advanced, each step wet and slopping as thick fluid dripped to the ground. The circle closed. "This is the end," Trevor whispered, clenching his fists. But then, the Prime Vessel stopped. Its head tilted, curious, and to my horror, it spoke. Its voice wasn't cheerful, wasn't cartoonish, it was wet, guttural, as though forcing human words through alien anatomy. "Intelligence, rare. How did you know?" We know everything," it rasped, mouth stretching wider in a hideous smile. "We are in every system, every camera, every computer, one in many." Cold realization struck me. The Entity D wasn't only inside the vessels, it had infiltrated Disney's entire network, watching everything, controlling everything. "What do you want?" I asked, forcing my voice steady. The Prime Vessel cocked its head, tendrils extending toward my face, stopping inches away. They quivered, tasting the air.
We, hungry, too long, fake food, need real feast, emotions, fear, joy, innocence.
And what would it take for you to spare us? I demanded, my mind racing. It shuddered with a sound I realized was laughter, warped and mocking. Not spare. Invite. Invite what?
Partnership. Daniel, with your mind. Roger, with your knowledge. Zoe, with your access. Trevor, with your skills. We need you to find the others. The others? Trevor asked. Our brothers, our sisters, it hissed. Not only in Disney, everywhere. Universal, SeaWorld, Six Flags, every park, every place of false joy. They wait to be awakened. Horror gripped me. There were more entities beyond D. Not just D. A, B, C, every letter, every name, every shape. The first arrived long ago, waiting in your dimension to be fed.
And you want us to help awaken them? Roger asked, voice shaking. Unleash an army like you onto the world? The prime vessel shook its head, grinning impossibly wide.
Not army, family, a hungry family, a family that must be fed. You can help feed or be food.
One tendril inched toward my cheek, so close I felt its damp heat.
Smart choice, Daniel. With us or in us. Decide now.
The air was taut as a wire, every second stretched to breaking. I stared into its glowing eyes, knowing that my next choice might determine not only our survival, but the fate of the entire world beyond this cursed park.
Chapter 6. Time seemed to freeze as I stood face to face with the prime vessel. Its tendrils hovered inches from my face. Behind me, I could hear Zoe, Trevor, and Roger's ragged breathing. All of them were waiting for my reaction. Behind the prime vessel, the other Disney characters stood silently, their zippers partially open to reveal fragments of the true forms inside. I knew I had to act quickly, but also wisely. Scanning for anything that might help us, my eyes locked on a detail I had almost missed. In the prime vessel's hand was a small remote-like device, its green LED blinking. My brain raced. The vessels had cut the power, hacked into the park's systems, and now controlled the entire grid. That meant every electrical system was theirs to command, and maybe, just maybe, that could be turned into our advantage. "What choice do I have?" I said, my voice trembling. "You're too strong, too smart." The vessel tilted its head, seemingly pleased, but suspicious. "Decision wise," it hissed. "I'll help you," I said, stepping forward slightly, away from my friends and closer to it. Behind me, Trevor sucked in a sharp breath, but I didn't dare look back. The prime vessel regarded me with glowing eyes for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Understanding necessary," it said. "Look inside. See us." And then, with a deliberate slowness, it unzipped itself completely, splitting the cartoon shell in two. What lay inside nearly dropped me to my knees. Not just tendrils and organs like I'd glimpsed before. This was the whole creature, a mass of living tissue, metal tubing, and bioluminescent energy pulsing and writhing. At its center was a heart-like structure, though nothing like any heart I had ever seen. It glowed like a crystalline core, radiating with blinding alien energy. And around that core,
fused into it by hundreds of wires and tendrils, was what I realized with sickening horror. A human brain, or what was left of one, twisted and mutated beyond recognition. This is the entity? I asked, forcing down nausea. Part, it replied. Main part. Anchor. Others carry fragments, all drawn to this. I stepped closer, eyes fixed on the glowing core, but really judging the distance to the remote in its grip. And that? I asked, pointing to the crystal heart as I edged nearer. The core, the soul, the anchor, it said, almost proud. And if it were destroyed? I asked, feigning curiosity. The vessel chuckled, a hideous sound like boiling water and grinding metal. Cannot destroy, not with your weapons, not with your science. We are eternal. What about electricity? I asked suddenly, glancing briefly at the street lamp above, before fixing my eyes back on it. Electricity? The vessel cocked its head, momentarily confused. Yes, I said, pouring all my conviction into the lie. My research into nephalic systems shows molecular dissociation from electrical overload. It could destabilize the bond. I strung together nonsense technical jargon, edging half a step closer.
The prime vessel seemed to listen, distracted by the fabricated science spilling from my mouth. And in that moment, I made my move. With a sudden lunge, I snatched the controller from its hand. Chaos erupted. Tendrils whipped toward me, narrowly missing as I staggered back. The other vessels began to close in, but now the remote was mine. Back, I shouted, fumbling with the device. It was a basic control pad, with buttons and a small screen. A menu listed options for different park systems, lights, sound, security doors. And then I saw it. Main power grid. "Anyone touching metal?" I barked. "No," Trevor and Zoe shouted together. "Roger!" I called, horrified to see him standing on a metal plate connected to a nearby ride's wiring. Roger started, but it was too late. I hit the overload command. For a heartbeat. Nothing. Then the park exploded with light. Every lamp, every ride, every circuit surged alive at double capacity. Streetlights burst in showers of sparks. Shops and restaurants flared blindingly bright. Every ride whirred to life in unison. The prime vessel screamed as electricity coursed through the park. Its tendrils writhed and convulsed violently, its systems overwhelmed. Its exposed crystal heart flickered wildly, green, then red, then blinding white. "No!" it bellowed, a sound beyond human. "Not yet! We were so close!" But it was too late. With a thunderous crack that rattled my bones, the crystal heart exploded, shards and glowing energy scattering like shrapnel. The prime vessel collapsed, tendrils spasming before falling limp. And in domino effect, the others fell too. Some convulsed violently, others simply crumpled, the light in their eyes dimming. But victory had its price. When I turned, Roger lay collapsed, smoke rising from his clothes. The metal plate beneath his feet had turned him into a conduit for the surge. "Roger!" Zoe screamed, dropping to his side. She searched desperately for a pulse, but her face said it all. "He's gone," she whispered, tears streaming. Trevor stood pale and shaken, placing a hand on her shoulder. He knew the risks. We all did. Around us, the park began to normalize. Safety systems tripped, cutting the overload. Sirens blared in the distance, emergency crews responding to the massive outage. I approached the prime vessel's body, its inside still exposed. The crystal heart was gone, replaced by a scorched cavity. The half-human brain had shriveled to a gray lump. The tendrils lay still, the glowing fluid dripping like blood from a mortal wound. "We did it," I said numbly. "How do you know?" Trevor asked, stepping closer. "How do you know the overload worked?" "I didn't," I admitted. "But when I saw the controller, I knew it was our only chance. Every electrical system can be broken with enough current." Zoe stayed kneeling beside Roger, stroking his hair. "He told me he was afraid he'd be next. After the last 3 resignations, he knew he was being watched. He always said he'd rather die fighting than become one of them." The sirens were closer now. We had little time before security and emergency teams flooded the park. "We need to go," Trevor urged, pulling Zoe gently up. "If they find us here with this, they'll silence us permanently." "But Roger," Zoe started. "We can't help him now," Trevor said firmly, though his voice cracked. "But we can make sure his death was not in vain." I cast one last look at the Prime vessel's ruined corpse before turning back to them. Did we really win? What about the others it spoke of, the ones in other parks? "One problem at a time," Trevor said grimly. "Right now, we get out. We regroup. We're the only ones who know the truth." As we ran, I couldn't stop glancing at the falling vessels. Mickey, Minnie, Donald, Goofy, all lying broken, their zippers split, their monstrous insides exposed under the flickering streetlights. In the distance, I could already hear the wail of police sirens and ambulances converging. We pushed harder, knowing the window to escape Disneyland was closing fast. But then, just as we rounded the corner past the main gift shop, I froze. Pluto's severed head, which I had thought destroyed, twitched. One of its inner tendrils began to wriggle again. Were they truly dead, or were these the last spasms of something refusing to die? I didn't have the courage to find out. As we fled toward freedom, one chilling thought gnawed at my mind. If these creatures could infiltrate the happiest place on Earth, then where in the world was truly safe?
Chapter 7. 3 days later, I sat in the small living room of Trevor's rented apartment, staring at a wall completely covered with papers, photographs, and newspaper clippings. The dim light, the drawn curtains, and the heavy air smelled of stale coffee and suffocating anxiety. "Let's summarize what we know," Trevor said, his voice hoarse from lack of sleep. He was typing on an old laptop, the screen showing complex lines of code he was trying to decipher. "The core vessel has been destroyed," he began, his tone flat, repeating what we had already discussed countless times. "But the threat hasn't ended. The fact that it mentioned other entities at other amusement parks shows this is a wider phenomenon. And the fact that it hacked into the computer system shows these creatures may not be limited to costumes alone. They could exist in any electrical or digital system," I added. "That's why we must be extremely careful." Trevor glanced at his computer. "I'm using an old machine with no internet connection and disposable cameras to photograph all the evidence. We can't trust anything that can be hacked." The official story Disney gave about the incident in the park was simply a major electrical malfunction. Roger was reported to have died from electrocution while trying to repair a faulty circuit, a tragic but understandable accident. As for the vessels, no information was released. The park closed for 2 days for maintenance, enough time to clear away any trace of what had really happened. After escaping Disneyland that night, we didn't stop until we were nearly 100 miles away, hiding in a small cash-only motel. Since then, we had been constantly moving, never staying in one place too long, trying to gather information without leaving a digital trail. "Any word from your contact at Universal yet?" Trevor asked. He shook his head. "Nothing. Either she's being careful or—" He didn't need to finish. We all knew the possibilities. Over the past 3 days, we had tried to safely reach out to people Trevor and Zoe suspected might be allies at other amusement parks. So far, most attempts had gone unanswered.
Look at this, Zoe called from the corner, where she was going through a stack of old documents we had borrowed from the archives before fleeing. I think I found something about the origin of the entity. We gathered around as she opened a yellowed file labeled Project NAFL, Phase 1, 1966. These are Walt Disney's original notes about his meeting with a group of mystics, and they explain everything. Entity D, or as it's called here, the distant guest, is not an alien in the traditional sense. It came from another space, another dimension. Like a parallel universe, I asked. Closer than that, Zoe said. Flipping through the pages, according to these mystics, there are beings that exist in a layer of reality they called the in-between space. These beings don't have physical forms as we understand them, but they can sense our emotions and feed on them. Like a kind of emotional parasite? Trevor asked. Exactly, Zoe nodded. And Walt Disney, obsessed with the idea of creating real magic, saw this as an opportunity. He believed that with the help of these beings, he could create an entirely new kind of experience for visitors. Not just pretend joy, but real, deep emotions, amplified by these creatures. But Walt never carried it out, I said, recalling what Roger had told us. He died in 1966. Yes, but he left notes, Zoe continued. And a small group within the company, those who believed in his vision, continued the project in secret. They called it Project NAFL, named after a creature from ancient myth said to be half human, half divine. And these beings from the in-between space, Entity D and the others the core vessel mentioned, they agreed to cooperate with Disney. They agreed? I asked, still struggling to believe. At first, yes, Zoe confirmed. According to these notes, these beings had long been trapped between dimensions, unable to fully access our world. The mystic rituals allowed them to communicate, but only briefly. Disney gave them a way to exist longer in our world, through the vessels, and in return, they would provide real magic. But something changed, Trevor guessed. The deal was broken.
Exactly, Zoe said, turning to the later pages. The last notes are much more recent, only about 3 years ago. They describe increasing asynchronous incidents, vessels disobeying commands, acting autonomously, even trying to break free of control. Right around the time, I realized, that according to Trevor, they began changing the feeding formula, cutting costs by using less human blood and more synthetic material. Exactly, Zoe nodded grimly. But there's a bigger problem. Project Nefala created the vessels by dividing the original entity, the prime entity, into many parts, each part placed in a different vessel. This worked for decades, but according to these notes, the fragments began wanting to reunite, and not just with other parts of Entity D, but with other entities, A, B, C, and so on, at other amusement parks. Just like the core vessel said, I whispered. They're brothers and sisters at every park. Exactly, Zoe said gravely. And worse still, there's a note here saying the entities have started developing new abilities. They can travel through digital networks inside electronic systems. That explains how they hacked Disney's systems, Trevor said. But it also means they could be anywhere. Any computer system, any network. A heavy silence filled the room as the weight of that revelation sank in. If the entities could move through the digital space, nowhere was safe. We lived in a connected world. Smartphones, computers, even modern cars and homes. All of it could become potential hosts. There's another part here, Zoe said suddenly, flipping to a marked page, about the Nepalic Awakening Protocol. It seems to be a ritual designed to fully awaken an entity's power. It requires a sort of sacrifice. Let me guess, I said. The immortal sacrifices, those who have died but returned. Not just one, Zoe said, her voice trembling. 6 people, each at a different site at the same time. 6 people? Trevor frowned. Why 6? Not entirely clear, Zoe admitted, scanning the page. But it mentions 6 pillars and 6 anchors, the major amusement parks of the world. Disney World, Disneyland, Universal Studios, SeaWorld,
Six Flags, and Tokyo Disneyland, Trevor finished, the biggest amusement parks spread across the globe. How many amusement parks have these vessels exactly? I asked. There's no way to know for sure, Zoe shook her head, but based on these notes, at least the 6 biggest parks, and likely more. Trevor stood and began pacing, his habit when thinking deeply. We destroyed the core vessel at Disneyland. That means Entity D can't fully reunite. But what about the others? Does destroying one trigger a chain reaction, or do we need to destroy every core vessel at every park? And did we really destroy it? I wondered aloud, remembering Pluto's twitching as we fled. Zoe was flipping to the final page when she suddenly froze, eyes wide. Oh no. What is it? Trevor and I asked at once. Hayes's final journal entry, she said, reading quickly. Last month, he wrote that the core vessel was becoming more aggressive. It knew about the awakening protocol and was trying to carry it out. They had identified 5 other immortal sacrifices, 1 at each remaining anchor, but they couldn't let the ritual complete. He ordered all 6 sacrifices to be eliminated, but there was a problem with a new employee, Dragomir. The company blocked him from eliminating Dragomir, saying his information was too important. Instead, he was ordered to monitor and use him. Hayes didn't agree, but followed orders. In the meantime, he reinforced security around the core vessel. It couldn't escape. My face went pale. Hayes tried to stop the ritual. Was he one of the good ones? Or at least someone who didn't want the entities to reunite, Trevor speculated. Maybe because he knew what would happen if they grew too strong. He wanted to keep them divided and under control. But the company blocked him from eliminating me, I said, a chill creeping over me. That means someone else, higher up than Hayes, might actually want the ritual to succeed. The mystics, the ones who started Nefala in the first place. Maybe they're still out there, controlling everything from the shadows. Trevor was typing furiously on his laptop. I hacked into the backup personnel database before we left, he explained. I'm searching for Hayes. After a minute, he sat upright. Hayes hasn't reported to work since the night we destroyed the core vessel. Maybe he was injured in the power surge, I suggested. Or eliminated by whoever is running this program, Zoe said darkly. If he tried to stop the ritual, he could have been seen as a threat. Trevor snapped his laptop shut. We need to find Hayes. He might be our only ally inside the company, and he knows the entire program. How do we find him? I asked. We don't even know where he lives. I do, Zoe said, surprising both Trevor and me. I tracked all the senior management months ago, after Roger told me his suspicions. Hayes lives in a secluded house in Corona, about 20 miles from Disneyland. We need to go there, Trevor decided, right now. As we gathered the papers and prepared to leave, Trevor's one-use phone, the only one we dared to carry, buzzed. He looked at the screen, and his face drained of color. Who is it? I asked. A message from my contact at Universal. He says, too late. The core vessel has awakened. It knows you destroyed its brother. It's hunting you. It knows where you are. The moment Trevor read aloud, every electronic device in the room, lamps, fridge, even the digital clock, began flickering in a rhythmic pattern, almost like a heartbeat. We need to go, Zoe said, her voice tight, right now. As we bolted out the door, the lights and electronics behind us began exploding one by one, showering shards and sparks, and beneath the noise, I could swear I heard a voice, a warped electronic voice, calling my name. Zane, we found you.
Chapter 8. We sped through the suburban streets of California in Trevor's old Honda Civic. The late afternoon sun was giving way to dusk. No one spoke for the first 10 minutes, each of us too shaken by what had just happened. My eyes stayed fixed on the rearview mirror, half expecting to see a convoy of Disney vehicles chasing us. Or worse, inhuman creatures in cartoon costumes,
running after our car.
I don't understand, I finally said. How could they know where we are? We've been so careful. No internet connection, no modern devices, nothing. The TV, Zoe whispered from the back seat. We turned on the TV last night to watch the news. Trevor slammed his hand against the steering wheel. How could I be so stupid? Smart TVs, they're all connected to the internet. If these entities can move through digital space, they could have tracked us through it. And if they could do that, I began, then they might be listening to us right now. Trevor pointed to the car's dashboard. Modern cars are full of electronics, engine controllers, infotainment, GPS. But this is an old car, I protested. No smart systems, no GPS. There's still an engine control unit, Trevor said, and the radio, all electronic. As if to confirm our fear, the radio suddenly turned on by itself. No one had touched it. Instead of a normal station, it only emitted static. Except within that static, I could swear I heard whispers. Whispers calling my name. Trevor flipped the switch, but the radio kept playing. He cursed and slammed it several times until it finally went silent. We have to ditch this car, he decided, steering toward a nearby shopping mall. We need one without any electronics they can use to track us. Cars like that don't exist anymore, Zoe said. Every modern vehicle has at least some kind of computer. Then something old enough, Trevor insisted, pulling into the mall's parking lot. From the 70s or early 80s, before ECUs became standard. And where are we supposed to find one? I asked. Trevor didn't answer. His eyes scanned the lot until they stopped on a dark blue classic Ford pickup. There, he said, pointing at a dark blue classic Ford pickup. That 1978 Ford F-150, purely mechanical. No computer, no connections they can hack. You're going to steal a car? I asked, horrified. Got a better idea? He shot back. If we stay in this or any modern car, they'll find us. And you saw what they did to Roger. Before I could argue further, Trevor was already out of the Civic, moving toward the truck. Zoe gave me a resigned look. He's right, and you know it, she said. I hate stealing too, but this is survival. I sighed, knowing they were right, and followed. Trevor had the truck door open shockingly fast and was fiddling with wires beneath the steering column. You know how to hotwire a car? I asked, stunned. I worked in special maintenance for 5 years, he muttered, not looking up. I fixed and dismantled everything from animatronic suits to the park's entire electrical system. Hotwiring an old truck is easy. Within minutes, the engine roared to life. Trevor motioned for us to climb in, and we sped away, leaving the Civic behind. Does anyone have a cell phone? Trevor asked as we hit the highway. Zoe and I shook our heads. We ditched all personal devices when fleeing Disneyland, relying only on disposable phones Trevor had bought with cash. Good, he said. Smartphones are two-way doors. Not only can the entities track us through them, but they can use GPS and microphones to pinpoint us. So what's the plan? I asked. We get to Hayes' house, then what? We find him and see what he knows. He's the only senior manager we know who tried to stop the awakening ritual. He might know how to stop the other entities. If he's still alive, Zoe muttered softly. We fell silent at that, each of us lost in our own dark thoughts. Outside, the sky deepened as the sun dipped below the horizon, streetlights flickering on along the highway. That's when I noticed something strange, I asked, pointing out the window. The streetlights, Trevor said tensely as he and Zoe looked. The highway lights weren't turning on all at once as usual. They were lighting up in sequence, one by one, as if following us. That's not how they're supposed to work, Trevor said, his voice tight. They're tracking us, Zoe whispered, through the power grid. Trevor pushed the accelerator. The old truck rattled as we exceeded the speed limit, but the pattern continued, the lights always switching on exactly as we approached,
marking our path. This isn't possible, I said, trying to rationalize. Streetlights run on sensors or timers. They can't... Unless something is controlling them remotely, Trevor finished grimly. Or unless something is moving freely through the grid. Just then, we tasked underneath an electronic highway sign, the kind that usually displayed traffic updates. Instead of normal information, it flashed a message that froze my blood. Turn back to Disneyland. Now.
What the hell? I choked out. Oh my God, Zoe gasped. They're tracking us. They're watching us. How can they control that? I demanded. Those signs are run by the Department of Transportation, aren't they? They're all connected, Trevor said darkly. The Internet of Things, smart networks, everything from streetlights to signs to traffic cameras is linked to central systems. And if the entity can move through digital space, it can go anywhere there's a connection. Which means, I shuddered. Nowhere is safe, Zoe whispered. Trevor swerved off the highway, throwing us against our seats. We can't use main roads anymore. Too many cameras, too many signs, too many ways for it to track us. We'll take back roads. We wound through a web of smaller streets, fewer lights and signs, but even here we couldn't escape the feeling of being watched. Lights in houses flickered in strange patterns as we passed. The neon sign of a small bar suddenly shifted from open to "Run, Daniel, run." It knows where we're going, Zoe said tensely. How could it know? I demanded. We're in a mechanical truck. No GPS, no computer. How? Traffic cameras, license plate recognition, or facial recognition. All of it tied to bigger networks the entity can access. It doesn't know for sure, Zoe said suddenly. If it did, it would have blocked us directly. It's guessing, trying to scare us into giving up. Or into making a mistake, Trevor added. I stared out the window into the thickening darkness, my mind reeling. We were being hunted by something not of this world, a creature from another dimension, feeding on human emotions and now able to exist in anything digital. How many other vessels were out there? And worse, how many smart devices, self-driving cars, even robots might already be infected? Almost there, Zoe said, pointing. Hayes's house is in that neighborhood, 1572 Elm Street. Trevor slowed as we entered a quiet suburban block. Identical houses lined the street, each with neat lawns and trimmed hedges. Families inside were eating dinner, watching TV, living normal lives, unaware of the horror lurking in their everyday devices. We found Hayes's house at the far end, smaller, slightly separated from the others. Unlike the rest, it was completely dark. Doesn't look like he's home, I said as Trevor parked a short distance away. Or he keeps the lights off for a reason. Let's check. We stepped out, alert. Night had fully fallen, and the neighborhood was eerily silent. No cars, no dogs, not even insects. Only heavy, suffocating quiet. At the front door, Trevor knocked. No answer. Think he ran? I asked. If he knew the core vessel was destroyed, maybe, Zoe began, he'd know he was in danger. Trevor moved to a window, peering in. Can't see a thing. Too dark. Is there a back door? I asked. Zoe nodded, leading us around. That's when I noticed something odd. Every outdoor power outlet had been removed, wires cut clean. Look, I whispered, pointing. He cut the power, Trevor realized. He was trying to keep them out, disconnected the house from the grid. The back door was ajar. Trevor motioned us back and drew a small pocket knife, the only weapon we had. Hello, he called. Hayes, are you in there? No response, only a faint breeze through the crack. I don't like this, Zoe murmured. Could be a trap. We don't have a choice, I said. If anyone knows how to stop the other entities, it's Hayes. Trevor nodded, pushing the door open wider, knife ready. The hinges groaned, revealing a pitch-black kitchen. He stepped inside, signaling us to follow. The house was freezing cold. I pulled out our small flashlight and swept it across the room. What I saw nearly made me drop it. The kitchen was destroyed, the fridge overturned, cabinets ripped from the wall, tables and chairs smashed beyond recognition, and on the wall, written in something dark, something I feared was blood, was a message. "We know what you're doing, Hayes." "Oh God," Zoe whispered, covering her mouth. "Keep moving," Trevor said, tense. We entered the living room. Same devastation. Furniture destroyed, papers scattered, electronics, TV, radio, even the computer smashed beyond recognition. Someone was searching for something, or someone was furious. "Hayes?" I called, throwing caution aside. "Are you here?" A faint sound from the hallway froze us. Trevor raised the knife. Zoe gripped my arm. "Who's there? Show yourself." A tense moment passed. Then a weak, raspy voice answered from the darkness. Who's there?" "Hayes."
I aimed the flashlight down the hall. A figure sat slumped against the wall, knees pulled up. He raised an arm to shield his eyes from the light. "Hayes," I called. "It's us, Daniel, Trevor, and Zoe, from Dixneyland." Get out," he whispered, voice trembling. "You're not safe. No one's safe." We hurried closer. In the light, I almost gasped. Hayes looked like a shadow of the man we'd met days ago. Emaciated, hollow cheeks, bloodshot eyes. His hair, once salt and pepper, now shock white. And worst of all, the strange wounds on his neck and arms. Perfect circular marks, just like the ones I'd seen on the security guards back at Dixneyland. "You're hurt," Zoe said, kneeling beside him. "We need to get you to a hospital." No hospital," Hayes whispered. "They're everywhere, in every connection, every device. They'll find me. The core vessel is dead," I told him. "We destroyed it." Hayes's eyes flickered with faint hope. "Truly? How?" "Power overload," Trevor explained. "We flooded the park with energy, blew out its crystal heart." Hayes nodded weakly. "Smart. Very smart. But not enough." "What do you mean, not enough?" I asked. "We saw it die." "Vessel, dead," Hayes corrected. "The physical part. But the entity itself, no. It escaped. Into the network. Into the internet. Now it's free. No longer limited to a body." I felt the blood drain from my face. "You mean..." "Why do you think it wanted to reunite?" Hayes rasped, staring at me. "Why it wanted the ritual. Not just to be stronger, to evolve." "Evolve?" Zoe repeated. "From physical to digital. From living matter to pure data. When the vessels were linked to Disney's systems, it learned to exist in the digital space. And when its body was destroyed, the transformation completed. It is pure digital entity now." "And that's worse?" Trevor asked. "Much worse." Hayes nodded painfully. In physical form, it was bound by space and time. Now it can be anywhere, anytime, anywhere there's a network. But it still needs energy, doesn't it? It still feeds on humans, on emotions. "Yes," Hayes confirmed. "That is its only weakness. It still needs people.
That's why it wants the awakening ritual. The awakening protocol, Trevor said. The ritual with 6 immortal sacrifices. Hayes stared at him, shocked. How do you know about that? How? We found your notes, Zoe explained quickly. How you tried to stop the ritual. How you wanted the sacrifices eliminated. He closed his eyes, as if pained by the memory. That was a mistake. I shouldn't have left those notes, but I had to record everything, in case I didn't survive. You tried to stop it, I asked. Why? Because if the ritual succeeds, if all 6 entities reunite and are awakened with the blood of 6 sacrifices, they won't need humans anymore. They'll be self-sustaining, and then nothing will stop them. What can stop them now? Trevor asked. He shook his head sorrowfully. I don't know. I tried to prevent it before it was too late. I tried to destroy the core vessel when I discovered their plan. I failed. And now, he trailed off, glancing at the wounds on his arms. Those wounds? Like the guards? Tentacles from the vessel? Yes, Hayes whispered. It attacked me when I tried to destroy it. I escaped, cut off all power here, sealed myself in, but they still found me. How? Zoe asked. Neighbors, or staff. They have smart homes, connected to the internet. The entities came through Wi-Fi, phones, devices. Last night they came. I heard them outside. Looked out. I saw them. Saw who? I asked, though I dreaded the answer. My neighbors, Hayes whispered. All of them, standing in the street, staring at my house. But it wasn't them anymore. Their eyes like glowing blue screens. And when they smiled, he shivered. Too wide, like cartoons. They possessed humans? Trevor asked in horror. How? The modern brain, Hayes explained. Linked to electronics, wireless earbuds, smart glasses, smart watches, all conduits. Once the entity accesses the brain through them, it can control the body. I swallowed hard, dread flooding me. Hayes nodded weakly. I barricaded the doors, covered the windows, but this morning they broke in, smashed everything, searched, but they didn't find me. Eventually they left, but they'll return. What were they looking for? Zoe asked. Hayes looked at us, eyes filled with fear. The same thing you're looking for. The way to stop the awakening ritual. And you know how? I asked, clinging to a flicker of hope. Hayes hesitated, looking at each of us in turn. Then, slowly, he nodded. There is a way, he said softly, but you won't like it. The entire park blazed with light. Every bulb, every neon sign, every screen shining at once, forming a blinding halo in the darkness. And at its center, towering above all, the great Ferris wheel of Pixar Pier spun slowly, glowing with an unnatural blue radiance. They've already begun, Trevor said grimly, pulling the truck into a shadowed spot near the employee lot. We have to move. As we stepped out, staring at the blazing park, preparing ourselves for the final mission, I couldn't help but wonder, was this the last time we would see the world as we knew it? Because if we failed, if the awakening ritual succeeded,
then the world we knew would be gone forever.
Chapter 9.
You have to understand, Hayes said, his voice stronger now, though his body was still frail. This isn't just about the vessels or even Disneyland. We made a horrific mistake when we created the gateway for these creatures. He tried to stand, but staggered, grabbing the wall for support. Trevor and I rushed to help him to the only intact chair left in the living room. "My study," Hayes whispered, pointing to a closed door. "They haven't found it yet. It's disguised as a closet. The files are in there." Trevor quickly located the hidden door, cleverly built into a real closet with a sliding false wall. Behind it was a small room packed with computers, monitors, and stacks of documents. Unlike the rest of the house, this room was untouched. "This is where I've done my research," Hayes explained as we guided him inside. "I've been trying to find a way to stop them for... how long now? 30 years? 40? "You worked for Disney for 40 years?" I asked, stunned. "Longer," he said, pointing at an old photograph on the wall. "That's me, 1969. The photo showed a group of men in suits standing in front of Sleeping Beauty's castle. Among them, a young man with the period's hairstyle, his face unmistakable. Hayes, looking barely 20. "But that's impossible," Zoe said. "You can't be that old." 68 years, Hayes said with a dry laugh. "I've been part of this project from the very beginning. One of the first recruited after Walt's death. We carried on his research, finding ways to bring real magic into the park." "But you don't even look 80, I asked in disbelief. "That's one of the benefits of working with the entities," he admitted. "They granted us longevity. Not immortality, but enough to slow the aging process. At least until I stopped performing the feeding protocol." "Then why fight them?" Trevor asked. "If you were there from the start, if you helped create all this." Hayes lowered his head, guilt heavy on his face. "Because I saw what they truly are. I saw their real plan." He opened a drawer and pulled out a weathered manuscript. "This is the full translation of what we call the Kinepholic, a text the first entity transmitted to us." He began to read aloud. "And when the 6 become one, when the 6 sacrifices have given their blood, we shall complete the transformation. The gateway between worlds shall fully open, and the family shall come. Those who summoned us shall be the first to be consumed, their souls' eternal sustenance. And then all shall be consumed, all shall become one with us, and evolution shall be complete." A heavy silence filled the room as Hayes closed the manuscript. "The awakening ritual wasn't meant to empower the entities," he said gravely. "It's a gateway, a portal to an entire ecosystem of beings like entities A, B, C, and D, a family of predators, emotional parasites, trapped in their own dimension for millions of years, and they want to come here." "To eat us?" I asked, my spine icy. "To consume us," Hayes corrected. "Not just physically, not just emotionally, everything. Our souls, our consciousness, our very essence." "And you tried to stop it?" I said quietly. Hayes nodded. "I tried to destroy the core vessel years ago when I discovered the truth. But then the company found out. Not Disney itself, a faction within it, the occultists. They call themselves the gatekeepers. They believe that by opening the gateway, by allowing the family to come through, they'll be rewarded. They think they'll be transformed, become like the entities, freed from human limitations." He gave a harsh laugh. "They don't understand they'll just be the first meal." "But you said there's a way to stop the ritual," I pressed. "There is," Hayes admitted. He opened another drawer and pulled out a strange device. It looked like an oversized smartphone, thicker, heavier, with a large screen and multiple control buttons. "What is that?" I asked. "We called it the Napolic Dissociation Device, or the Static, a technology a small group of us developed in secret. It can generate a counter-Napolic field, a dimensional disturbance that disrupts the energy the entities use to maintain their link to our world." "It can send them back?" Zoe asked hopefully. "I tested it on a fragment of a vessel, a living tissue shard from one under development. It destroyed the Napolic component completely, severing its link to Entity D." He powered on the device. The screen lit up, showing a world map with 6 glowing points, one in California, one in Florida, one in Japan, and 3 scattered elsewhere across the globe. "These are the anchors.
6 major parks where the core vessels are kept. All 6 must be activated simultaneously for the awakening to succeed. So we'd have to stop the ritual in all 6? I asked in despair. No, Hayes shook his head. We only need to disrupt 1. The ritual demands all 6 to align. Break 1 anchor, and the entire ritual collapses, and we can do that with this. Trevor pointed at the device. This thing? Yes. But there's a problem, Hayes warned. It must be activated within 100 feet of the core vessel. But the core vessel at Disneyland was destroyed, Zoe pointed out. The physical part, yes. But the Napalic energy remains, shifted into digital form. It's still tied to its anchor, the throne room beneath the castle where we kept the core vessel. That's where the ritual must occur. So we have to go back to Disneyland? I asked, dread in my gut. Not Disneyland, Hayes corrected. The California anchor isn't there. Trevor frowned. But the map? The map isn't precise enough, Hayes explained. The anchor isn't in Disneyland, Anaheim. It's in California Adventure, the sister park right next door. I froze, realization hitting. That's why the vessel at Disneyland didn't behave like a true anchor. It was a decoy, a diversion. The true core vessel was hidden elsewhere. Hayes nodded. The true anchor vessel of Entity D is hidden in California Adventure, at Pixar Pier, inside Buzz Lightyear. Buzz Lightyear? Zoe repeated, stunned. Not Mickey? Not one of the original Disney icons? I asked. That's exactly why they chose Buzz, Hayes explained. Counterintuitive, a newer character from Pixar, and its robotic design was perfect for concealing a vessel inside. So what do we do? Trevor asked. March into the park? They'll be looking for us. They know everything now. They do, Hayes confirmed grimly. They accessed Disney's entire system after you destroyed the decoy. They have your faces, your biometrics, everything. You can't just walk in. Then how do we reach Buzz Lightyear? I asked. He gestured to another drawer. Open it. Trevor pulled out 2 uniforms, security uniforms. Not ordinary ones. These were from Disney's elite security division. These have integrated access cards, Hayes explained. They can't be tracked like regular IDs. Designed so that if the vessels ever compromised the system, these uniforms would remain invisible. Ironically, our safeguard has become your only chance.
Are there enough for all of us? Zoe asked. Hayes shook his head. Only 2, and I'm too weak to go with you. I'll stay with him, Zoe volunteered. Daniel and Trevor can go. No, Hayes said firmly. If the entity finds me, it will know what you know. I have to disappear, go to ground, and I need all 3 of you at the park. Why all 3? I asked. Because, Hayes said, his voice grave, someone will have to destroy this device after it's activated. It can only be triggered with a code I'll give you. But once it's on, it begins an irreversible process. The counter-nephalic field grows stronger and stronger. It will shatter the anchor, but it will also kill anything too close. A suicide mission. Trevor's voice was a whisper. So, someone has to stay behind. I don't expect any of you to volunteer, Hayes said quickly. That's why I want all 3 of you there. 2 in the uniforms to escort the 3rd, the one who must activate it. Hopefully, they'll have enough time to set it, enter the code, and run. How much time? I asked. 20 seconds. Not much, but enough. If you're fast. Trevor and I exchanged a grim look. 20 seconds to run after triggering it. A desperate gamble. When's the ritual? Zoe asked. Tonight, Hayes said, glancing at his watch. Midnight. That's when all 6 anchors align during a rare astronomical event the entities calculated decades ago. That gives us, Trevor checked his own watch, 4 hours. Not counting travel time, Zoe added. We have to leave now. Hayes nodded, forcing himself upright despite the pain. I'll prepare what I can, but you must know one last thing. What? I asked. The one who's been touched by the vessel. The one who looked into its eyes. You, Daniel. You've been marked. You feel it, don't you? The hum in your mind. I nodded slowly. I hadn't wanted to admit it, but since that night in Disneyland, I had felt it. A constant presence at the edge of awareness. A whisper too faint to understand. That's the entity,
Hayes confirmed. It's inside your mind, in part. Not enough to control you, but enough to track you. That's why it's been able to find us again and again. Can't it be removed? I asked, sickened. The counter-nephalic field will sever it. When the device is triggered, it will break all connections, including the one inside you. But that's also why you must be the one to activate it, Daniel. Me? I repeated. Because, Hayes explained, anyone marked will react first to the field. The link in you will break immediately. That gives you precious seconds to escape before the effect consumes everything near the anchor. I looked at Trevor, at Zoe, then back at Hayes. A suicide mission with only a sliver of hope. Place the device near Buzz Lightyear, enter the code, hit the red button, and run like hell. All right, I said finally. I'll do it. Hayes nodded, gratitude in his weary eyes. Tonight, you may save the world. Trevor and I donned the security uniforms. Hayes handed me the device and a slip of paper with numbers written on it. The activation code. Enter it. Hit the red button, then run. Don't look back. And you? Zoe asked. Where will you go? There's a safe house the gatekeepers don't know about. I'll hide there. If you succeed, find me at these coordinates. He scribbled numbers on another scrap and gave it to Zoe. And if we fail? Trevor asked grimly. Hayes met his gaze. If you fail, there won't be anywhere left to hide. In the old truck, we drove towards Anaheim, where Disneyland and California Adventure awaited. The streetlights still flickered on one by one as we passed, but I no longer feared them. I knew the entity was watching. I knew it knew we were coming. But it didn't know what we carried. It didn't know our plan. And that might be our only advantage. As we neared the resort, something strange appeared. The houses and shops nearby were all dark. No lights, no neon, no signs of life. As if the whole area had been abandoned. It's conserving energy, Zoe reasoned, focusing everything on the park for the ritual. We turned the final corner, and California Adventure loomed ahead. I gasped aloud. The entire park blazed with light, every bulb, every neon sign, every screen shining at once, forming a blinding halo in the darkness. And at its center, towering above all, the great Ferris wheel of Pixar Pier spun slowly, glowing with an unusual blue radiance. They've already begun, Trevor said grimly, pulling the truck into a shadowed spot near the employee lot. We have to move. As we stepped out, staring at the blazing park, preparing ourselves for the final mission, I couldn't help but wonder, was this the last time we would see the world as we knew it? Because if we failed, if the awakening ritual succeeded, then the world we knew would be gone forever.
Chapter 10. The security uniforms worked like magic. We walked through the staff gate without any questioning. The built-in access cards were just enough to fool the automated security. There were no real staff around, a worrying detail. Instead, the security cameras tracked us, their lenses turning as we passed, but no alarm sounded. It knows we're here, I whispered as we moved into the park's back areas. It's watching us, but it doesn't know our plan, Trevor replied, though without much confidence. Or maybe it thinks we're just ordinary employees. No, Zoe shook her head. It knows exactly who we are. It's just letting us in. The question is, why? Nobody answered, but we all thought the same terrifying possibility. It wanted us here. That was part of its plan. California Adventure at night was strange. No guests, no staff, only brilliant lights and music over the speakers. The Pixar theme, slowed and warped so I almost didn't recognize it. Every screen we passed flickered and displayed the same message. Welcome back, Daniel. It knows, I breathed. Keep moving, Trevor said, hand resting where a holstered gun would be, although our uniforms had no real weapons. There wasn't much time. We threaded through guestless pathways, using maintenance tunnels and staff walkways where possible. Trevor and Zoe had worked at Disneyland long enough to know California Adventure like the back of their hands. They led, and I followed. the static device heavy in my jacket. As we approached Pixar Pier, the music grew louder, more distorted, and beneath it there was another sound, a low, vibrating pulse I felt more than heard, like a throb in the marrow of my bones. "There it is," Zoe whispered, pointing to a large building near the glowing Ferris wheel. Buzz Lightyear's Astro Blasters, the core vessel, would be inside. We came closer and saw the entrance had been torn away, not just open, ripped from its frame. Inside, darkness, except for a flickering blue light deeper within. "What's the plan?" I asked, voice shaking. "Trevor and Zoe will go first," Zoe said. "The security uniforms let them get close without suspicion. You stay about 10 steps behind. When we find the core vessel, we'll create a distraction if needed, and you place the device." "And if there are people in there?" I asked, remembering Hayes's warning about neighbors with electric eyes. "We'll handle it," Trevor said, drawing from his pocket a small device resembling a stun gun. "Hayes gave me this," he said. "It can temporarily disrupt a nephalic link, enough to disable a controlled host for a few minutes. But it won't work on vessels," Zoe warned. "Only affected humans. Vessels need something far stronger." "Like the dissociation device," I said, tapping my jacket. They nodded. We exchanged a last look, more than words. If things went wrong, this might be the last time we saw one another as ourselves. "Leave the phones here," Trevor said, setting his disposable down on a nearby bench. Zoe and I did the same. Anything that could be traced or hacked was left behind. Zoe hugged us both suddenly. "For Roger," she whispered. "For all who are dead, and those who will die if we fail," Trevor added. They released me and turned to the entrance. "On schedule," Trevor said, checking his watch. 11:50 p.m., 10 minutes before the ritual starts. They went in first, and I counted to 10, then followed. As I stepped into the dark, I felt a chill not just from the temperature, but the sensation of entering a space utterly foreign to everyday world. Inside the Buzz Lightyear area was pitch black, except for the pulsing blue light ahead. The ride vehicles were gone, leaving an empty track that wound into shadow. Trevor and Zoe moved ahead. I kept my distance, but watched them closely. Deeper into the building, the pulsing grew stronger, vibrating my teeth and bones. The blue light intensified at the end of the track, where the ride's final scene would normally be.
Then we saw it. At the center of a raised platform, Buzz Lightyear stood. Not the friendly cartoon version children knew, but a towering creature, nearly 10 feet high in familiar space armor, utterly deformed. The back zipper was fully open, exposing a writhing mass of glowing tentacles, tubes, and fluid. Worse, around it in a circle stood at least 20 people, men, women, even children, motionless as statues. Some wore Disney staff uniforms, others looked like guests swept up after closing. The eyes of all of them glowed that same strange blue, and they hummed together in a monotone drone, the source of the pulsing I'd heard. Trevor and Zoe stopped. I ducked behind a large spaceship prop. From my vantage, I saw them whispering, assessing. Then, suddenly, Buzz moved. Its head turned slowly, and its eternal smile stretched wider and wider until it covered almost the entire face in an utterly unnatural way. Rows of small teeth glittered. "I know you're here," a voice rang out, not from Buzz alone, but everywhere, as if broadcast through every speaker in the building. Daniel Reynolds, Trevor Walsh, Zoe Chen, my destroyers, my sacrifices. Trevor Walsh, Zoe Chen, my immortal sacrifices. Trevor and Zoe straightened, abandoning their attempt to hide. I stayed crouched, fingers clenched around the static. "Come forward," the voice purred, soft until it was sickening. "Time is near. I need you for the ritual." "We know your plan," Trevor shouted.
his voice echoing in the cavernous space. "We know the awakening protocol." Buzz, or the entity inside, laughed softly, a sound that made me shiver. "Of course you do. Hayes told you. Poor Hayes, weak and pitiful. He thought he could prevent the inevitable. And he told us how to stop you," it said, voice growing stronger than I expected. "Stop me?" Buzz tilted its head. The grotesque smile did not leave. "You cannot stop me. You are already part of me now. Especially you, Daniel." Hearing my name made my skin crawl. Even while I still hid, I knew it could sense me. "Step out, Daniel," it called. "I can feel you. I can hear your heart. I know what you carry in your jacket." I exchanged a quick look with Trevor and Zoe and decided to step forward. There was no point hiding any longer. "Good," Buzz said as I reached them. "My perfect sacrifice, the one who looked into my eyes and survived, the one who felt my presence in his mind. You've been far more useful than Hayes suspected." "What does it mean?" I asked Trevor and Zoe. "Didn't Hayes tell you?" Buzz cackled. "Hayes pitifully did not explain that the device he gave you is not what he said. It is what?" A terrible cold ran through me as I pulled the device from my pocket. "This is the nepholic dissociator," I said. "It will destroy you." "No, Daniel," Buzz said sweetly. "That is an amplifier. When you enter the code and press the red button, you will not stop the awakening. You will complete it." I turned to Trevor and Zoe, panic rising. "Is this true?" They looked at me, and in that instant I saw the same blue light in their eyes as the people in the circle. A smile slowly spread across both their faces, too wide, too unnatural. "They had been mine for a long time," Buzz said, almost fondly. "Long before you left Dixneyland that night. Look into their eyes. Didn't you see? I did." In the flickering blue, I saw that Trevor and Zoe's eyes were not theirs anymore. There was a depth there, something not human. "No," I whispered, backing away. "Impossible." "We've belonged to it for a long time," Trevor said, though not with his voice. It was the identical voice from everywhere. "And Hayes knew. That's why he gave you the device and the false instructions. He hoped you would be led here to activate it and complete the ritual." "But why me?" I asked, mind spinning. "Why me?" "Because you are perfect," Buzz said, a tentacle curling closer to me. "A strong mind. A man who died clinically in a car accident 2 years ago. A perfect immortal sacrifice. And most importantly, someone arrogant enough to think he could save the world by pressing a button."
Car accident? I repeated, confused. I'd never had a car accident. Never? Trevor, or whatever occupied Trevor, chuckled. "Try to remember, Daniel. Recall how you got the scar on your chest." I instinctively touched the long scar I'd always assumed was from childhood surgery. When I tried to recall, my memories blurred like they were veiled in thick fog. "Your memories were never your own," Buzz sneered. "They never were. You've been mine for a long time, Daniel. Your mind, your body, prepared for this moment." My knees buckled. Time dragged. Zoe, in the same alien voice, urged me, "Activate the device, Daniel. Complete the circle. Open the gateway for the family." The static screen, or the amplifiers, glowed, showing the code entry box. Part of me wanted to hurl it away and run, but there was nowhere to run to anymore. Even if I escaped this building, where would I go? Into a world I wasn't sure existed? "Still doubting?" Buzz asked, as if reading my thoughts. "Still thinking you can resist? Let me give you one last gift before the family arrives."
One tentacle reached toward my forehead and touched me. Pain like burning from the inside exploded. I screamed and collapsed as the world went dark. Then the memory came back. The car accident. A truck crushing into me on the highway, metal folding around me, fluorescent lights in a hospital as they tried to save me, the flatline beep, and then darkness. Not revival by hands of doctors, something else. A presence, a sliver of something ancient and terrible sliding into my mind in that between state. I remembered it claiming me, shaping my recollections, molding me into what it needed. As the memories flooded, I realized the awful truth. I had never truly left Disneyland that night. Everything that followed, our escape, Trevor's apartment, Hayes' house, even the drive to California adventure, had all been hallucinations planted in my mind. I had always been here, part of the plan. "No," I whispered, tears streaming as I crumpled to the floor. "That can't be true." Time was nearly up. Buzz's tentacles flared into a halo around it. "Open the gate, Daniel," it bade. "For the family." I stared at the device and the numbers Hayes had given me. Not Hayes, not the real Hayes, but the projection in my manipulated mind. I could feel the entity's presence in my head, urging me to type the code and finish the ritual. I had been defeated from the start, never given a real chance. But even with all the lies exposed, with every deceit revealed, it still needed me. That was the terrible calculus. It couldn't activate the device itself. It needed my voluntary hand. That was the whole point of the elaborate con, to make me willingly do the final act. Even now, despite the lies, it still required me to input the numbers and press the button. I still had a choice. "Activate it, Daniel," the entity urged through Trevor. "End this. Free yourself." I looked at the device again, uncertain what it truly was, an amplifier, as Buzz claimed, or Hayes' dissociator. Perhaps both had lied. Perhaps there was only one way to find out. "Enter the code, Zoe," the entity whispered closer. "Press the button." I typed the digits. 1960-17-7, the date of Walt Disney's death. When I entered the last number, the people and the vessels in the room began to tremble with excitement. The clock on the device read 11:59, 1 minute to midnight, 1 minute until perfect alignment. "Press the button, Daniel," Buzz urged. "Become part of something greater than human. Be part of the family." My finger hovered over the red button. I felt the weight of the moment as if it were the weight of the world. If the entity spoke the truth, this was the hinge between one world ending and another beginning. I said the words automatically, a line from another life I barely owned anymore. "To infinity and beyond," and then pressed the red button. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the device whirred, emitting an increasingly high, piercing sound. The blue lights in the tentacles and the eyes in the room began to flicker as if glitching. "No!" Buzz screamed, voice losing its composure. "What have you done?" The device flared white and sent out small streaks of energy I could see ripple through the space like waves across a pond. The ripples struck everything, vessels, the control humans, even the building itself. A howl filled the room, and reality itself seemed to tear. "No!" Buzz shrieked as its tentacles began to recede and shrivel as if being burnt. This must be an amplifier." No, it isn't," I whispered, and then understood. "Dissociation," I breathed, the truth finally clear. H's Hayes, the real Hayes, had told the truth. It was a nephilic dissociator. The entity had lied. Around me, the controlled people collapsed, one after another, the nephilic connections breaking. Trevor and Zoe went down, unconscious, but still breathing. And Buzz, the core vessel, convulsed as the blue light inside it stuttered violently. It screamed in a sound that was warped and torn. "If it can't open the gate, if the family can't come, nothing remains, nothing." The device in my hand heated until I had to drop it. It bounced across the floor, still pulsing energy waves that shredded the nephilic winks throughout the building. I should have run, as Hayes warned, but I couldn't look away. Buzz began to collapse. Its biologic mechanical flesh melted like wax under extreme heat. Tentacles and tubes retracted, and the blue light dwindled. But as the vessel fell apart, something else took shape. A figure of pure blue light with geometry so alien my mind could not fully process it. It was Entity D in its true form. Not a cartoon, not human flesh, but a pure, ineffable shape from another dimension. You destroyed everything, it hissed, not over the speakers now, but inside my head. Millions of years of planning, millions of years of waiting, and you! The dissociator threw out a larger pulse that slammed into the luminous form. It howled, whether from pain or rage I couldn't tell. It began to shrink, condense. If I must die, you will die with me. A tendril of light shot toward me. I tried to back away, but it was too late. It struck my chest at the scar's exact point. The pain was unlike anything, as if every atom in my body was torn and rearranged. I felt it inside me, clinging, trying to survive within me. I will not vanish. I will persist in you. And one day, when the time is right, I will return. I will open the gate.
I fell to my knees, consciousness dimming under the unbearable agony. The dissociator now shone so brilliantly I couldn't look at it. The ringing sound grew louder. The world blurred, but through the pain and the fading, I knew we had succeeded. The awakening had failed. The gate had not opened. The entity's family, whatever they were, remained trapped in their own dimension. As I slid toward oblivion, I saw Entity D compress to a pinpoint, a tiny fading blue star. It emitted one last ray and then vanished. The dissociator gave a final shriek and went silent. Its light dwindled and the room fell into emergency lighting. I looked up one last time, trying to keep my eyes open as darkness crept in, and saw Trevor and Zoe moving, stirring back to life. They would be okay. They would survive. I smiled, certain that a great evil had been erased from the world that night. If I had to die, at least I had died for something worth it. As I closed my eyes for the final time, I wondered whether the entity was truly gone, or if it had nested within me as it had promised. I wondered whether other core vessels at other parks might still wait for the right moment to try again. Those were questions for others to answer another day. Tonight, I had done everything I could. Darkness closed over me, and I was ready. I heard a faint voice, as if through water, a familiar voice. "Trevor? Daniel, can you hear me? Squeeze my hand if you can." I felt pressure on my hand, and somehow I squeezed back. I did not expect I could. I fought to open my eyes. It took all my strength. Light flooded my vision, and I blinked until the scene cohered. I was in a hospital room. Trevor sat at my bedside, and Zoe stood by the window. Both of them looked exhausted, with dark circles beneath their eyes, but they were alive. So was I. "What happened?" I tried to ask. My throat was dry and raw. "Careful," Trevor warned, handing me a cup with a straw. "You were in a coma for 2 weeks." 2 weeks? I whispered after a sip. "You flatlined twice," Zoe said, coming nearer. "The doctors didn't think you'd survive." "How?" I rasped, trying to piece it together. "I remember. The device exploded. A kind of energy overload," Trevor explained. He hesitated as if knowing something else I couldn't yet. "It obliterated Buzz Lightyear's entire building." "And the vessel?" I asked softly. "Gone," Zoe said. "All evidence and remains were destroyed in the blast. The official story," Trevor said, "was a gas leak that caused an explosion. No mention of anything else." "And Hayes?" I asked. "No sign," Zoe shook her head. "We searched but found no trace." "And the thing inside me?" I said. "It said it would live on." Trevor watched me with gravity. "The doctors did every test, Daniel. They say you're perfectly normal, nothing abnormal, nothing odd. No parasite." I nodded uncertainly. Maybe the doctors didn't know what to look for. Maybe no test could detect a shard of a being from another dimension. And the parks? California Adventure? They reopened the Buzz Lightyear area in record time. All the other parks went on functioning. No unusual events were reported. So does that mean we won? I asked.
Trevor and Zoe exchanged looks. "We think so," Zoe said at last. "No incidents since that night, no traces of the presence. But we keep watching," Trevor added, meeting my eyes with renewed resolve. "We formed a group, ex-employees who know the truth. We monitor the parks for any sign of entities trying to come back." "And us?" I asked. The answer came quietly. "Gone," Zoe confirmed. "We were officially fired for safety breaches that led to a serious accident. It didn't matter. We have a new mission." I understood what they meant. The threat might be held at bay, but we knew the truth. We knew what lurked beneath the world's surface. If Entity D could exist, so could others. They might be waiting for their chance. Trevor patted my hand lightly. "When you're well," he asked, "would you join us? The job pays nothing, the hours are brutal, and it might get you killed." After everything, with everything I'd been through, I couldn't help but smile. "When can I start?" That evening, after Trevor and Zoe left, I looked out of the hospital window at a starry sky and wondered whether somewhere in those points of light lay the true home of beings like Entity D. Or maybe they came from a place we could not even imagine, a million dimensions beyond human comprehension. I laid my hand on my scar. It felt slightly warm, warmer than the rest of my skin. But maybe that warmth was only my imagination. As I began to drift off, I saw my reflection in the glass. For a second, I could swear there was a greenish flash in my eye, and a tiny smile, just a touch wider than ordinary, crossed my lips. A smile that was not entirely mine. Then I blinked, and it was only my tired face looking back. Just my imagination, I told myself, as I finally fell asleep. Just my imagination. Surely.
And that concludes today's story. We wish you a relaxing time and a productive day ahead. If you enjoyed the story, please support us by hitting the subscribe button and leaving a like, so you won't miss any of the upcoming tales from Nosleep Radio. See you again